Hello, thanks for inviting me to speak at this excellent conference. It's my first day at the conference, and I've looked at the fascinating itinerary, and I guess by now some of you at least will be beginning to sober up. So I'll try and entertain you and keep you awake. Some of you may recognise me from when the conference came up to the UEA. It must have been 6-7 years ago, a long time ago. 12 years ago, is that? Crikey, okay, well that says a lot. The pace of change in Norfolk is pretty slow, but it actually, in that time, the county has actually got significantly smaller. And the rate of that change, the rate of coastal recession is closely correlated to my receding hairline. And you'll see why. Does this work? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about addressing the challenges for people on an increasingly challenging coastline. I'm going to tell you the tale of two villages. They are both Haysborough. It's spelled Happysburg, but it's not always been full of happy people. The challenges are really turning wicked problems into common objectives, uncomfortable knowledge into sound understanding, and clumsy mistakes into elegant solutions. I hope we've been successful in that. You can judge in part today that the real judges are the people in Haysborough. We have what is euphemistically called a dynamic coast, probably the most dynamic in the UK. It moves a lot, but it's always moved a lot. Coastal evolution from medieval times to the present day. Everybody's familiar with the fact that the coast hasn't always been in precisely where it is today. People have always been affected by it. People seem to be giants in those days. They could ride on the tops of houses. That was one solution. But there have always been impacts. Coastal settlements have always changed. That change has always been a bit of a phenomenon. It's always been interesting to people. That church that's shown in the picture on the right is a very interesting bit of our beach now, and when you see pebbles stuck together with mortar on the beach, you know that it used to be a church. They've been returned to where they came from. The policy background is something which is worth studying, I think, and this is where the interest really comes in. We had post-war, really. I mean, the coast has been protected since medieval times, but in various different ways in different places. The Victorians did a lot and developed resort towns, but really on the North Norfolk coast, it's since post-war times that defences beyond the main settlements have been put in place. Because there were defences, there was further development, and that started this sort of cycle of defend, develop, and then you have to continue to defend. It becomes unsustainable. In 2003, there was really a new look at policy with the development of shoreline management plans and a better understanding of coastal processes and sea level rise. At this time, people started to make predictions. At the same time, there was a reduced level of funding for coast protection measures. Three more go there. Coastal change impacts have never really been factored into this, and that's the major part of my talk today. There's been no funding or method for managing the change. We've had management plans, but no real management. There's been no compensation or mitigation for the people affected, and whilst there's been a budget for coast protection throughout the country, although reducing, there's never been a budget for managing the consequences of coastal change. So in 2009, largely as a result of a lobby which really began in the village of Haysborough, the Coastal Change Pathfinder was developed by DEFRA. It was £11 million funding, really a nationwide experiment undertaken by local authorities on behalf of DEFRA to try and find new ways of managing coastal change. And North Norfolk was successful in getting the largest grant in the country and got £3 million from that. Haysborough, a euphemism for blight or fight, and actually it's probably both. and that's what's led to its success. This is Haysborough back in 1888. You can see the vicarage, the Hill House pub, the lifeboat station, Coast Guard station, not very much close to the coast. And there might be a good reason for that. However, moving on, 1905, we now have this beautiful butterfly-style arts and crafts building developed along the coast. We have these railway cottages, and actually the signal box is at the back of the pub. It's still there. There's no railway, there never was a railway, but it was one of these grand plans to develop a coastal. If you Google Haysborough Station, you do get a picture, a mock-up picture of something that someone's produced. But somebody had a grand plan for Haysborough. It was going to be defended, and it was going to be somewhere pretty special. And by 1938, still no defences actually, but then you have this string of sort of cliff-top chalets taking advantage of that coastal location. By 1992, the defences have been in place for some time. These revetments, which are not protecting the coast from change, but slowing the pace of that change, and taking some of the energy out of the waves before they hit the cliffs. And you can see the development along the coast, which joined up further along. By 2001, the defences had failed significantly along this area, and rapid recession and the loss of a large number of properties. This is when scientists, engineers and other ologists start to get interested and start to make predictions and draw lines on maps. And these, rather straight lines have 20, 40, 60, 80 and I think that's another 80 years written on them. Now that was 10, 20 years ago when that was drawn up. And that relates to the extent of the recession of that coastline, or the predicted extent of the recession of that coastline. Shoreline management plans were then produced from around about 2003, and the North Norfolk, this shoreline management plan for this part of the North Norfolk coast was actually a pilot. It's only just been adopted some 10 years later. But what it showed, simplistically, was that chamfering off some bits of coast which looked unsustainable and can't be sustained, we can't afford to sustain them, and as sea levels continue to rise it becomes more challenging and technically difficult to sustain them. So the policy is that we won't, and that the coast will change. And that's a shoreline management plan. The management bit really is get used to it. The coast, of course, doesn't respect shoreline management plans. It carries on doing whatever it's going to do. And in that respect, it's right to make predictions. But the consequences are, well, quite obvious. On the one hand, these iconic houses toppling over the edge. But the blight and the disinvestment and the sort of dereliction that starts to occur, even well in advance of the coast actually moving. So you've got physical effects, but you've actually got that disinvestment causing another kind of blight, which is often well in advance. As soon as you've got a prediction of some change over a 100-year period, that's when the blight sets in, and that's when the changes really start to occur. Sometimes 100 years of it actually occurring. The sea defences by now are beyond the state of any kind of repair. It's a no-return situation, and the beach is turning into a disaster area. Really. We've got some. Sorry, I'll skip some. The old lifeboat station, which is there, and the Coast Guard lookout. Lost the ramp, so they lost their contact with the beach. And the beach became a battleground. It's not a beach any longer. That's just a small snapshot of some of the pictures of Haysborough Beach. And that's the change in 10 years along the coast. So you've got properties here in 1996, all but completely disappeared. The houses that previously had felt safe from having a degree of protection were then increasingly vulnerable, and the whole community began to be associated with this blight that spread throughout the whole village. Not much of Haysborough, actually, if you look at those previous lines, is affected within a reasonably long period. Much of the village is behind that, but the sort of blight by association affected a much wider area. Facilities were also affected. It wasn't just people's houses. The coast, unfortunately, is not made like a brick outhouse. It's changed. The toilets and the car park, which the District Council previously owned, the toilets had to be removed when the services were lost. The car park, we no longer took any revenue from when the ticket machines were nicked, and we felt if there's no facilities there, no access to the beach, no toilets, we can't realistically be taking money from that car park in any case. So the village wasn't a coastal village that people would visit for pleasure. They would visit for another reason. We'll talk about that in a moment. The nature of the issues is probably illustrated by this aerial photograph. Caravan park perched on the top of a cliff. We've got the historic buildings which I've mentioned, the houses, the car park and toilet facilities, the beach access, matters which are all in some way interrelated, but there was no way of moving forward. The community began to protest. They realised they weren't going to get sea defences. There was no campaign to get defences. They knew that was unrealistic. What they were campaigning for was social justice. This was a means by which the impacts could be managed in a way which supported them. So we began to talk. We began a dialogue. We began to scribble on maps, understand more holistic solutions. And this is something I did probably 8 years ago or something, started to just sort of doodle, and nobody had done this before. What are the things that we need to do? We need to roll back the caravan site, we need to relocate, demolish the houses, we need to clear up some of the dereliction and link the two parts of the beach. We had timescales within which certain actions had to be taken, relocating facilities, doing a whole load of different things which were holistic, they were interrelated. In the meantime, the community had no means of negotiating. So what they did, they put their hands in their own pockets and raised £50,000 in a very short space of time, more than that actually, to put in a rock berm, which actually was designed to buy some time. It wasn't a permanent solution, it's not permanent sea defence, but it's buying time so we can actually develop those alternative solutions. And they came in the form of the District Council purchasing houses from willing owners, demolishing them. The people who received the money for their home moved on, and interestingly, that house on the right, the bungalow on the right, is still there. It's not one that we purchased. The others were demolished. We've worked together with the local landowner to get planning permission to build the 9 houses which are going to replace those that are lost. They won't be for the same households. We're talking about removing houses and therefore investing in the village and addressing the issues of blight. We will then sell that house to that site to a private developer. We've relocated facilities. The steps, which were a temporary solution to maintain access to the beach, really didn't last that long. We had to remove the bridge because the cliff had receded so far. So the caravan park was left without access to the beach. We put in a new ramp, we put in the car park and a new set of toilets, which we gave to the parish council. These toilets, which were designed by an architect, there's a long story behind that, I'll give a whole talk about that. were Loo of the Year last year. So if you look on the Loo of the Year awards, we won it for Haysborough. That was the cause of most of my hair loss, actually. We've dealt with the scheme to relocate the caravan site and enabled local people to understand their own heritage and interpret it and come to terms with the changes that are taking place, which ended up with the publication of a book, which you can get on Amazon. 3 lessons, I was asked to give 3 lessons. We can't ignore change. We must manage it together. Thank you.